Hello, I'm Superintendent Jack Smith, and I'm honored to present my recommended operating budget for fiscal year 2022. A school system operating budget is much more than revenues and expenditures, or dollars and cents. An operating budget is a reflection of our goals and our commitment to an excellent education for all students. This is a unique year. I don't need to remind anyone of the deep impact of COVID-19 on our families, our students, and our community. We therefore must be united for our future if we are to be ready for school next year. Let me be frank, planning for next year's financial needs is unlike any other year in our lifetime. The pandemic impact on students and school operations is profound, as schools, students, and staff have been required to reimagine and retool the way we teach and the way we learn. It has provided us also with new ways to educate and new options for access to programs remotely. These can be positive developments. It is important to recognize the support and collaboration of the Montgomery County Board of Education. Their leadership has been a guiding light during virtual learning. Before the pandemic, and now, the board is a critical partner in making this a great school system. And because of this support, MCPS has provided an excellent education for decades. Yet this once-in-a-lifetime event rightly challenges us to reimagine everything we do. Many students have done well, but many more are struggling with remote learning. For some, there is learning loss. For some, grades are down. For some, remaining engaged is difficult. And for some learners, those impacted by poverty and other challenges at home, virtual learning has been especially difficult. We must double our efforts so that learning now and in the future is an equitable experience. We know all children can learn, and we can't let our current challenges divert us from that commitment. We look forward to a time when we will be back in our school buildings. It's what our students need and our community demands. Someone mentioned to me, we grow through what we go through. Our school system is doing just that. And to a person, we are committed to a positive future for all students. This video is that story. How we've had to change. How we've had to react to what doesn't work, and most importantly, how we are planning for that future. How we are united for our future.
The story of FY22 begins in FY21. That was a year that begins as they all do, with excitement and hope and potential for all students.
It's a wonderful first day of school.
We're jamming on the first day of school.
The story of a budget for FY22 is also a reflection of the growth in planning over many years, and ultimately, unfortunately, the significant impacts of the crippling COVID-19 global pandemic. Chris Lloyd, president of MCEA, recently, in an operating budget discussion, observed that the impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic, what we're having to react to so significantly, is a once-in-a-century event. It's true. Not in any of our lifetimes have we had to so significantly and so quickly completely reimagine how we deliver teaching and learning. More than 100 years ago, the Spanish flu spread across the globe, affecting 500 million people, and according to the Centers for Disease Control, taking the lives of nearly 675,000 Americans. The newspapers of the day summed it up. Thousands were ill and public spaces were closed, including schools. In late winter of 2020, the news headlines began to tell a similar story. Lockdown, closure, illness, fear, and death. March 16, 2020, schools closed their doors in Montgomery County. Students and staff locked down at home, and MCPS, reacting with incredible speed, implemented the Continuity of Learning Plan. Although the future was uncertain, the community adopted a positive attitude.
We're all in this together!
Significant shifts in teaching and learning and expenditures occurred. All learning moved to virtual. Lessons had to be reimagined for online. Online meant a massive investment in technology for Chromebooks, MiFi internet access, teaching platforms to support it all, and professional development for staff to work in these new spaces. Social-emotional supports for students and staff. Adjustments to grading policies to reflect a new reality. But at the end of the school year in June, students completed their work and the class of 2020 graduated. It is a time-honored tradition that marks an important transition for students, and although virtual, it rang with hope and energy for the future.
It's your opportunity to know your talents and to share them with the world.
Well underway, but now an immediate focus was the development of the Reimagine, Reopen, Recover plan for the next school year. School leaders, buoyed by the success and lessons learned during continuity of learning, now completed the necessary and required planning that would allow for a safe return to school. Cross-functional groups of stakeholders from throughout the MCPS community worked together on this plan. It involved a deeper commitment to technology, investments in personal protective equipment, schools set up to physically distance students and staff, significant social-emotional supports for students and staff, and complex schedules that allowed for blended in-person and virtual learning. Following guidance from local, state, and federal officials, it was determined that it was not safe to return to in-person learning.
All in favor by a show of hands, and that is unanimous.
The MCPS school year begins in an all-virtual model. School system planners and families had to make more adjustments to support a full day of learning online.
In my more than 40 years in education, we started this school year like no other. Buses delivered food and supplies, not students. Food service staff delivered food in parking lots, not cafeterias. Teachers taught from home, not classrooms. Important programs for special needs students and ESOL students had to be reimagined for the online space. Principals held back-to-school nights via Zoom, and so much more had to be done in new and different ways. Parents needed to reimagine childcare, virtual workspaces, and provide a level of support they previously didn't have to offer. But at the heart of it all were dedicated and imaginative employees at every level. Their efforts made this work. They, our staff, are one of the most important investments in this school system.
This most recent year has shown that quality employees are the jewel in the crown of a great school system. They are school leaders, teachers, and support professionals. They are the heart of our community.
We've had to redesign what we normally have done with meetings in regards to observing and analyzing teaching and providing feedback to our staff, as well as to our parents, and reminding them and comforting them about what's going to happen in these challenging times.
Building meaningful, impactful relationships, developing a rapport with our students, that takes time. Maintaining and fostering trusting relationships with our families, that takes time. So it's turning our workloads into 14-hour days and so much investment of time and resources, and it's a lot, but we're making it through.
We've always focused on customer delight, but we've really stepped up during these challenging times. Our staff has taken on many new roles. We're now delivering produce, daily meals, and technology to homes. We're providing Spanish and other language speakers across the system to help out in so many ways. We've provided monitors for the SAT and ACT administration, and we've called tens of thousands of families to encourage them to take the parent preference survey. I'm so happy our DOT staff has been able to help MCPS in this way.
The MCPS budget reflects this commitment. The budget is not about numbers that pay a bill, but is about the people that make it great. The MCPS budget is about the demonstrated will of Montgomery County to support a quality school system and the staff who are at its heart. Until this moment in time, MCPS has seen steady enrollment growth. For more than a decade, the district's operating budget has had to grow to reflect these rises. It has also grown to reflect the changing needs of our student body, such as rising ESOL services or special needs services. This year, however, nearly 5,000 students have chosen other forms of education. This pandemic change in enrollment has been studied by MCPS demographers, staff in the Office of Shared Accountability, and the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Schools. The reasons are not surprising. Some families have moved away, some have chosen to homeschool, and some have chosen private education. What we also learned is many of these families are ready to return to MCPS after the pandemic. For this reason and others, MCPS funding is under threat like never before. Expected significant losses of tax revenue at the local and state level, and the pandemic-driven enrollment drop will mean reductions in maintenance of effort funding and per-pupil support if those strict enrollment levels are what determine MCPS funding. Now is the time to be thoughtful and not reactive when considering these support levels. MCPS must be ready to support all students when families return to MCPS after COVID-19. Enrollment change is only one risk to MCPS funding. The expected loss of the Maryland Blueprint for Maryland's Future, or Kerwin Plan as it's more commonly known, a program vetoed by Maryland's governor. Staff healthcare cost increases due to needed surgeries and other important therapies that have been delayed by COVID-19. Determining the needed level of virtual learning in the next year, which involves more staff and technology. And expected needs for mental health and other social emotional supports for students and staff. Specific funding levels to combat these risks is unknown at this time. Let's examine the details of just one of these potential losses, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The fact is that this extra funding resource paid for critical programs and supports during virtual learning. Here are the details. Whether for our earliest learners, special learners, focus supports in high-need schools, or important targeted recruitment of highly qualified teachers. These monies supported students and staff when they needed it most, during virtual learning, pandemic learning. A potential $27 million less if not renewed in the next year. The risks to funding are real, and the unknowns from state budgets, local budgets, revenues losses, and impact of significant needs in our communities mean we need a united for our future approach. We must trust that state and local leaders will see the wisdom of finding support levels that don't reflect current pandemic-driven enrollment levels. A plan for the future needs to reflect where we will very likely be, not where we are. Again, our research says students will be returning, and we are planning for increased mental health and wellness supports, additional support for struggling learners, using the virtual format where appropriate, broadening our efforts for our most impacted schools, enhancing staff capabilities in new ways, and maintaining our staff and operations for this future growth. We must maintain our trained and ready workforce. Also, the MCPS community has spoken. Cross-functional teams with a wide variety of stakeholders from throughout the MCPS school community identified more priorities, not fewer. Increased access and expanded opportunities for students. More mental health and social emotional supports for students and staff. A deepened commitment to equity and to fight effects of bias and racism. And to work against learning loss and support those who have struggled in virtual learning. Revenue reports, decisions by state and local leaders make it difficult to specifically project a budget request at this time. And like no other year, we will have to revisit our plan in the coming months. But knowing students will return when the pandemic abates, knowing there will be learning loss, knowing there will be mental health and other social emotional needs, the recommended budget for fiscal year 2022 is $2.713 billion. This is based on a continuation of services approach and reflects the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. This funding request is $40.4 million over the minimum level required by the Maintenance of Effort Law and is 1.5% less than the complete budget for fiscal year 2021. The request above MOE is the minimum needed to maintain operations for expected return of students in the fall. Our students remind us of the importance of these investments.
I think with technology, especially like in this current era with like the pandemic and stuff, like having access to like Chromebooks to make sure people are like staying connected with the county and also their school is really important.
I personally think that a great school system is one that teaches and is able to offer students experiences from different perspectives, and one that really like values its educators.
Teachers obviously are a very, very, very important investment. Teachers who know what they're doing, teachers who are supportive of kids, teachers who want to be there, teachers who are qualified.
I know teachers right now are especially being super flexible and kind with just everything and supporting us as students.
At the end of the day, we're students and we go there to learn. So having a wide variety of classes so that everyone could feel included while they're learning.
Things like the fine arts go a long way in a human's life, and because I'm a musician myself, so personally I believe that fine arts are very important.
I think access to transportation, especially with like after school activities, a lot of them run like a couple hours after the end of the school day. And I think that would be really important in increasing people's involvement in those extracurricular activities, even if their parents may not be able to transport them back and forth from school.
Mental health should be a top priority for the school system. And I think one of the best spending things we could look into would be hiring professionals who know how to reach out to students, who know how to identify students that need help, so we're not relying on students to be both independent and self-aware to get the right amount of help.
From this point, the Board of Education will hold a number of public hearings and budget work sessions in January. The governor offers his budget, and state funding guidelines come out in January. The Board of Education will tentatively adopt a budget in February and submit it to the county executive. And the county executive offers his budget proposal in March. Final county council action on the budget and final Board of Education action on the budget are completed by June, prior to the next fiscal year, which begins on July 1. The MCPS operating budget is a reflection of the work we must do for our students and staff, and the resources to make that happen. It is a reflection of what our community expects from Montgomery County Public Schools. Thank you to all who support our students. They, our students, need each of us on their academic journey. Our staff, the teachers, the building leaders, and support professionals, they are the heart of this community. Thank you to the Board of Education for your leadership at this critical time. Ensuring the right supports and opportunities for our students is the right work. And if we do this well, if all of us are united for our future, we will remain deserving of the name Montgomery County Public Schools. Thank you.